I'm the youngest of three, and my two older brothers were in college when my parents decided to move. I was 19 at the time, and I would go house hunting with them, and we saw a lot of houses all over the Bay Area, but my parents decided on this house in Livermore. And when I went there the first time, it didn't have a home feeling. You didn't feel like that warm, like comfort. There was just something about it that didn't seem welcoming or inviting. Their house was built in the 80s, and it's more of a cottage style. Like a lot of the houses in the neighborhood are very unique. They're not cookie cutter. They're not like one after the other kind of looks the same. There's a lot of light that comes into the house, which is why I felt it was so weird that when I first walked into that house when my parents were still interested in buying it, and that it felt weird. It felt cold. It didn't feel welcoming. But my older brother mentioned it, but he had met the family prior. I guess he went on one of the shows with my parents, and the original family was still there, and they talked to one another. And my brother mentioned that they were the people that owned the house before my parents did were very odd, kept very much to themselves, and didn't have like great social cues. Like they wouldn't really look at you when they would talk, or it felt very odd to talk to them, is what he said. And it could have been that. It could have been that, like that, the family's energy was still there. But nonetheless, they went through with it. And by the time that everything was done, both of my brothers were home for, I think it was summer break from their colleges. The first night, I actually saw, I thought it was my mom. I thought it was her going from my door to my window, because I had a window seat. And when I chose that room as my room, my mom mentioned that she always wanted a window seat when she was a little girl. So I thought that's what she was doing. She was admiring this window seat, but it was like 3:00 in the morning. And I remember, again, I was a teenager. So I was like, Mom, get out of my room. And then when she didn't leave, and I said it again, I was like, Mom, get out of my room. So I threw the covers off to go, confront her about it. And then whoever was there was gone. And my dog, who was with me at the time, even saw something. Like he watched this figure go from the door to my window. So I knew I wasn't just seeing something. It wasn't something that was coming from my sleep or my dream. But I brushed it off because I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to seem like dramatic, because I made it really clear that I didn't like this house. So I didn't want anybody to think that I was making up stories or something. So I just let it go. But then things got weirder. Like we would be sitting having dinner, and we would hear somebody like aggressively walking or even running sometimes above where we have our kitchen table, which is where my parents' room is. So at first we thought it was squirrels, because we had a lot of trees in that area. My parents' house was. But as time went on, we knew that it just didn't make sense, because it was too loud, and squirrels were going back and forth across a roof all the time. But it just it got heavier at night. That sound got heavier and heavier, but we just let it go. I don't think anybody wanted to admit that there was possibly something going on. But it was constant every time we had family dinner, and it was just like go back and forth, like pacing. We did a lot of construction on this house, and used to be the washer and dryer rooms and the laundry room just became, or every whole thing that didn't have a home just got shoved in to this room. And it was late at night, but I was making myself something to eat. And I remember, and the layout of the house that it used to be, you looked right from the kitchen into the laundry room. And something caught my eye, so I just happened to look up, and I saw this small figure, and I think it was this figure of a small girl. I didn't see long hair. I didn't see a dress. I just saw like this small standing in the doorway, and I just stared at it for what felt like forever, just staring at. But then I was like, I have to break contact, because I had that intrusive thought of like, oh, is it staring at me or is it back to me? And as soon as I thought about it staring at me, I just immediately averted my eyes. And when I looked back, it wasn't there. Again, didn't want to tell anybody about it because I was like, this is getting weird. The fact that seeing this woman when I was still in a daze from sleeping, but now seeing this figure of a child while I'm not any bit tired, it's just dark out. And like, how do I explain that? And then they started to get, I wouldn't say aggressive, but they started to make their presence more known, whatever it was. We actually had a friend that graduated from high school. So we were having a family friend that graduated from high school. So they were having a party for them. My older brother had already gone back to his college for the fall semester, but my eldest brother was at home. So we were planning to carpool from my parents' house to our family friend's house that was having the graduation party. And I'm getting ready and blasting my music, and I hear like someone knocking on my bedroom door. So I open it up and there's no one there. And I'm like, all right, whatever. My brother's just being mean or rude because he's an older brother. Our rooms were like catty cornered to each other. So like our rooms kind of opened up and they met. So that's what I thought he was doing. I thought he was just opening up his door, leaning around the corner and just knocking on mine. But you know what? I called out to him and I asked him like, okay, are you ready to go? And he didn't reply. I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep playing my music. So that's what I was doing. And then a little while later, the knocking happened again, but it was more of an aggressive knock. So I opened up my door again and yelled at him again if he was ready. Still no answer. So now I'm just getting annoyed. I'm like, okay, you're not responding to me, but you're pounding on my door. That's not cool. So then I start to get spiteful and I blast my music. And shortly after I blast my music, the door gets knocked on so hard that it shakes it. And I was right there. I knew I wanted to confront him. I wanted to yell at him because I was just annoyed at the time. And I flung open the door and there was nothing. And I look in my brother's room. Again, his room is right next to mine and there's no one there. So I call him up and I hear that he's already at the party because I can hear the background noise. And he's like, I've been here for 15 minutes. Like I tried to text you, but you didn't text me back. So I just left. And I bolted out of that house. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And I confessed that things were happening. Like once that whole thing went down with the door knocking, I was like, all right, like that's to see things, but now to be like interacting with them is like a whole nother level. So I came clean, and my mom mentioned that she had this weird feeling that she wasn't alone sometimes when she would be in the house when like we were all at work or if I was at school. She got this weird feeling that there was something there with her. We actually ended up having a block party shortly after. So she got the bright idea to ask one of our neighbors if they have ghosts. And in my mind, I was like, don't ask random people if they have ghosts in their house. Like we just moved into this neighborhood. We had a bunch of construction going on during the summer. I don't think we're anybody's favorite neighbor right now, so let's not add to it. So she said she wouldn't ask anybody, but towards the end of the block party there, we were at a table with this older couple, and my mom was just eyeing her, and then she looked at me and she's like, I think I'm going to ask her. I'm like, don't ask her. If you're going to ask anybody, please don't ask this old woman and her husband. Let's not do that. But she asked, and the woman looked at my mom and looked at us and then said, yeah, we all have ghosts. Don't you know where you live? And I remember I was just like, are you kidding me? That is the last response I ever thought we would get. I thought we would get the eye roll, the shrug, the kind of cold shoulder response. I was never expecting to hear her say that there's definitely something going on here, but how do you not know where you live? So we looked it up and we found that the house that my parents' home was on old sanitarium ground. We went online because the old woman actually gave us a website. She found she got her little pocketbook out, and she had a scrap piece of paper and a pen, and she wrote down this website, and she says, I'm not going to tell you, but you need to go look up where your house is. And it was super weird. And it was a very brilliantly done website. There's a whole chunk of, I think it's off of a town's website that you can access it from, but it has all kinds of pictures from the sanitarium. So it was cool to see, because it ran for, I think, over 100 years. And it was more for tuberculosis patients. So there was definitely people that had passed away there, but it was for tuberculosis patients and people that were mentally ill. So when we did some investigation, we did find that electroshock therapy was done at this place, and some water therapy, which I don't know what that entails. And when they broke it down on this website that we found, there's still houses from when it was a sanitarium that are still there today. Like the doctor's house is still in the neighborhood. There's still some homes, and they all look alike. So they're pretty distinct, but those used to be the nurses' quarters. The tennis court that was on the sanitarium grounds is still in the neighborhood where my parents' house is. And it was shocking. I definitely didn't think that, but it gave some kind of comfort to give it a reason, not even a reason, but just to know that there was something that was there before, and it wasn't just these random spirits of people that may have died in that house, that it was something before my parents' home was there. We didn't really talk to the old homeowner, so we don't know if they saw anything or if they had any experiences, but yeah, there was comfort in knowing that it wasn't just that they were there because they might have been there from the old sanitarium times. Who knows? There's a reason why these spirits are here. It wasn't just, oh, hey, we're just going to attach ourselves to you, or we bought something in. But even knowing that, or even with having that story and that understanding of where the grounds were, 3 months after we found out about the sanitarium, my mom had to leave the country. She was in Canada, and my dad had to move to San Diego, so he wasn't in the house. And my eldest brother had graduated from his college, so it was just him and I at home. And I was 19. My parents were out of the house. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to go enjoy being 19. And I went out with some friends. And when I came home, my eldest brother was like, you're never going to believe what happened. He's definitely a skeptic. He doesn't like to believe in things if he can't see it, touch it, feel it himself. That's just who he is. We had a German Shepherd at the time, and she was a very skittish dog. She didn't like to go anywhere she didn't have to. She wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go check this out because I'm curious. That's not who she was. She wanted to stay where she was familiar with. And she was downstairs, and my brother was upstairs in his room. And I think he said at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, he heard this scratching sound coming from the garage. So he went downstairs and looked around and noticed that Hannah, our German Shepherd, wasn't there. And then he heard the scratching again, and he opened up the garage door, and she bolted inside. He's like, okay, that's weird. She won't go in the garage if there's nothing there or no one there. She just doesn't. That's not who she is. So he shut the door, and we had just gotten the inside of this house painted. So this paint was making the door stick to the door frame pretty, you had to give some oomph to it to open it up. So he made sure it was shut because he thought maybe that when he was last in the garage, he didn't open it up, or he didn't close it fully. That he'd opened it up ajar, and that she had gotten curious and opened it up or whatever. So he made sure that the door was shut, and he went back upstairs to go play his guitar. And 30 minutes later, he heard the scratching again, but it was way more intense and way more it was more often. Before it was he heard a couple scratches, and then he didn't hear it for a while, and then he heard a couple more scratches, but it was pretty constant with this new group of scratching. So he went downstairs and saw that Hannah was not there again, where she usually is, and he opened up the garage door, and sure enough, she ran inside with her tail between her legs, and she was just shaking. but it's not cool that it's, trying to not hurt, but scare animals, especially our little German Shepherd. When my mom came back from Canada, we had she called herself a shaman, which I laugh at, but she was a spiritual healer of some sort. And she came in and started to do her practicing around the house. And she saged all the rooms first. And then she did some spiritual cleansing with the clapping in the corners and bells. And then she sat in our living room and meditated. And she started to call on the spirits, so to speak, of the house or the land. And she mentioned that she heard or saw the presence of a mother and a child, but she couldn't identify if it was a boy or a girl. So when she said that she had an interaction with a mother and a child, that kind of confirmed to me, like, okay, I was seeing what I was seeing. I was seeing this little girl or this grown woman and this child. And I only saw them those one time. I didn't see them again. It was more of they would just do things like mess with the dogs or bang on doors or close and open doors at random, the pacing. So they never really showed themselves other than those times to me. It's one thing to think you saw it, and then there's another thing to have it like confirmed. And then I think I moved out like at least 3 years later, and things would happen on and off where it was like something would be moved on the counter. You would put it on one part of the counter, and then by the next time you looked, like the next day, it would be on the opposite side. So nothing too, I wouldn't say malicious. I think what happened with my dog was probably the most malicious part of it. But I moved out and my parents said it stopped, that there wasn't anything that really happened. It just, the walking across the floor, which would be the ceiling for our kitchen, that stopped. The opening and closing of the doors stopped. And it stopped when I moved. And every now, like if I have to house sit for my parents, since I still live close to them, if I stay for more than a week, it still happens. There will be little things like you'll sometimes hear odd noises, things will be moved around, but it's only if I stay there for a week or more. So I don't know if they only want to come out when I'm there. I have no idea, but they stay pretty dormant unless I've been there for a while. I think it might have just been that they wanted us to know, because I feel like if they wanted to be truly malicious or truly malevolent and very much, oh, this is my place, get out, they would have done more. I think they just wanted to interact, maybe. Again, I don't know if they interacted with the other family or the family prior to them, but it didn't, I never felt like scared. It wasn't like, whoa, okay, like I'm freaking out, my heart's racing. It was just kind of, oh, okay, like that's there, and I'm seeing that, and I don't know how to process it. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, like there's this entity, this evil entity. I never got the bad energy or bad vibe, so to speak, from them. The only time I was really like, okay, that's not cool, is when they messed with our dog, and they didn't do it after, or they haven't done it since. I think it was just like they were maybe testing their limits or trying to be funny, trying to play tricks. I couldn't tell you exactly what was there, but it was I never felt scared. I never felt like bad. I never got like that, ooh, this isn't, whatever is here isn't good. I never got that. It was more of, they're just curious. I think they just want to check out like who we are and see what we're about. And if they're going to be occupying this home too, they want to make sure that they like us, that they want us to stay in where they are residing or where they feel like they're at rest. And we looked into where they took the people that died of tuberculosis or anything, and we couldn't find where they took their bodies, if there was a graveyard on site or if they had a different sight for their bodies. We have no idea. So it could very well be that that there was something underneath my parents' house. We still have no idea. After experiencing that, you can't go through something like that and deny that there's something else other than our realm that we see every day. I think that there has to be something other than that. To see those things, to have it confirmed, and then be interacting with it in the forms of like stuff being moved, doors opening and closing, doors being banged on, and to have no other proof that it's not that. What would move a cup or a salt shaker from one end of the table to the other without anybody touching it? What would be banging on the door when there's nobody home except the person on the other side of the door who's not near that door? There's things that I went through and I experienced where it made me 100% more of a believer than I was prior.